Emily Carter walked briskly across the tarmac of the naval base, the cold November air biting through her jacket. Her boots made a soft thud against the concrete, a rhythm almost lost among the roar of helicopter engines and the distant shuffle of soldiers preparing for morning drills. She was 26, unassuming in appearance, but with eyes that held the calm of someone who had seen the impossible and survived. Today, like every other day, she carried herself as if the eyes of the world were upon her, even though most of the men on the base barely gave her a second glance. Inside the armory, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Rows of rifles, pistols, and tactical gear gleamed under the harsh artificial glow. Emily stepped forward, her fingers brushing lightly against a rack of M4 South, testing the weight, as if reacquainting herself with old friends. "I'll need a rifle," she said softly, directing her words to the armory sergeant. The response was a chorus of chuckles. "You? A rifle?" One soldier laughed, leaning against a wall, arms crossed. "Planning to take on the SEALs single-handedly?" Another snorted, glancing at his colleagues, smirking. Even a few of the young officers snickered, nudging one another. They had all seen civilians and analysts like her before, bright minds with no battlefield experience, confident in theory, but soft when it came to action. Emily didn't respond. She didn't need to. Marcus Hawley, the SEAL commander observing from the side, froze mid-step. Something about the way she asked, calm, measured, unshaken, caused him to pause. He'd heard that tone before, many years ago, in a place where bullets tore through night air, and every decision carried the weight of life and death. That tone belonged to someone who understood more than the datasheets and security protocols could reveal. Someone dangerous in the best possible way. Emily's hands moved with precision as she selected the rifle. She checked the stock, the barrel, the sights, treating the weapon with reverence rather than arrogance. Around her, the laughter began to fade. There was a subtle recognition, almost imperceptible, in the way her fingers adjusted the sling and chambered around. Hale's instincts screamed at him to pay attention. This was no ordinary analyst. As the other soldiers mocked her, Emily remained silent, letting their ignorance fill the room while she prepared. She knew what she could do, and that knowledge was far more valuable than their approval. She lifted the rifle and shouldered it naturally, moving to an open space where she could demonstrate proper handling. The men scoffed at her stance, muttering under their breaths, but she ignored them. Every muscle in her body was trained, disciplined, honed for precision. The room's atmosphere shifted subtly when Hal stepped closer. The commanding officers. Presence alone was enough to quiet some of the louder voices, but even they sensed something different about Emily. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, wasn't seeking validation. She simply existed in her element, fully aware of what she could do. And that awareness, that quiet confidence, made some uncomfortable. Outside, the morning sun had begun to pierce the mist over the base, casting long shadows across the asphalt. Emily moved to the firing line, methodical and focused, inspecting her targets. Hawley followed silently, a hand resting lightly on the side of his holster. He watched her load the rifle, noting the subtle ease with which she checked the magazine and chambered the round. Each motion precise, controlled, practiced. "Emily Carter?" Hawley murmured under his breath, almost to himself. The name seemed ordinary, mundane even. But something in the way she carried herself, every measured movement, every quiet breath, triggered a memory buried deep in his mind. A memory of shadows, gunfire, and a night when a single figure had saved 6 men he considered brothers. Could it be? Could the Valkyrie of legend be standing here, under fluorescent lights, calmly handling a weapon while the rest of the world laughed? The other officers began to notice the subtle tension. The laughter faded as they followed Hale's gaze, confused by the sudden seriousness. What's she done? Muttered one corporal under his breath. Nobody got an answer. Emily didn't acknowledge the stares or the whispers. She focused on her target, adjusting her stance, sighting, and breathing. Her body moved with a fluidity and precision that spoke of countless hours of training, some known, most secret. Hale stepped closer, careful not to startle her. "Show me what you've got," he said quietly. There was no challenge in his tone, only an unspoken understanding. Emily nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and raised the rifle. The first shot rang out, precise, hitting the bullseye dead center. The second shot followed, equally perfect. Each subsequent round landed with unnerving consistency. The men who had mocked her just moments ago fell silent. Emily's face remained calm, expression neutral. She wasn't performing. She was existing in her element. Hale's mind raced. Every motion, every decision, every calculated breath screamed familiarity. He had seen these instincts before, in combat, under fire, with lives hanging in the balance. And somehow, they belonged to someone who should have been dead. A hush settled over the armory. Even the loudest voices dared not break it. Emily lowered the rifle, her eyes scanning the room once, silently acknowledging the men who now watched her with wide-eyed disbelief. She didn't smile, didn't boast. She simply returned the rifle to its place, her movements fluid, controlled, and utterly unremarkable, if one didn't know her history. Hale remained frozen, staring. His mind turned over possibilities, piecing together fragments of classified files, old mission reports, and whispers of a legend long thought gone. Valkyrie. The name echoed in his memory. And yet here she was, standing calmly in the naval armory, unshaken, powerful, and silent. Emily turned to leave, her steps deliberate and measured, leaving a room full of men who didn't know whether to fear her, admire her, or doubt their own eyes. Hale didn't move. He knew, deep down, that nothing about this day would ever be ordinary again. And for the first time in years, he realized the war he thought was over had returned in human form, quiet, lethal, and unstoppable. The morning after the armory incident, Marcus Hall sat alone in his office, staring at the blinking cursor on his secure terminal. He should have been reviewing operational reports, yet his mind was consumed with one thought: Emily Carter. Something about the calm precision, the almost otherworldly control she displayed with a rifle gnawed at him. Her presence was impossible to ignore. He had seen many capable analysts, many strong officers, but none had moved like her. None had held themselves with the combination of silence and authority she possessed. Hale leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He had to know. Pulling up the base's personnel files, he searched for her clearance level, training records, and background checks. Nothing indicated military combat experience. Officially, she was a civilian analyst with a knack for weapon systems and data intelligence. Nothing more. But Hale had a nagging feeling, a memory he couldn't place, a faint, burning recognition that he couldn't ignore. He accessed deeper files, classified beyond most eyes. A secure folder flickered to life. Joint Task Force Valkyrie. Hale's breath caught. He clicked. A single encrypted codename stared back at him. Valkyrie. It was a name that belonged to a ghost, a myth whispered among the SEAL community and intelligence circles. She had been the operative who, years ago, had saved 6 of his men during a night ambush in Afghanistan. The same Valkyrie who was declared missing in action and assumed dead. The room seemed to shrink around him. The chill from the air conditioning was nothing compared to the cold realization of the truth. Could Emily Carter be her? Could this quiet analyst, mocked for asking for a rifle, brushed aside as just a civilian, be the woman who had once walked through gunfire, saving soldiers under impossible odds? Hale leaned forward, scanning the encrypted files for confirmation. The identifiers matched. Her age, her military alias. Even the subtle hand movements described in the reports mirrored what he had seen firsthand in the armory. A knock at the door startled him. He quickly minimized the files. Lieutenant Jenkins, one of his aides, stepped in, coffee in hand. "Commander, the briefing is ready," she said, glancing at the screen. Hale nodded, forcing a neutral expression. Jenkins left, unaware of the storm inside him. Hale's mind raced. If Emily was Valkyrie, she had been undercover, presumed dead, and somehow returned to civilian life. Why was she here, now, in this base? Was it coincidence, or had someone directed her return? The questions gnawed at him, each one heavier than the last. He couldn't risk asking directly. Such knowledge was classified even at the Pentagon level. But he had to understand, had to confirm. He decided on observation. Over the next 2 days, Hale watched Emily carefully. She moved through the base with the quiet efficiency of someone who knew every protocol by heart. She adjusted weapons, analyzed data, and assisted officers, all without fanfare. Her calm was unnerving. Hale noticed how her eyes missed nothing. The slight tension in a soldier's stance, the micro-expressions of officers arguing over logistics, even minor flaws in base security. Every movement revealed discipline. Every glance revealed awareness. She was alert, present, and always several steps ahead. During a lunch break in the cafeteria, Hale finally approached her. The room buzzed with conversation, soldiers and civilians alike oblivious to the tension between the two. Hale's voice was soft, but carried weight. "Emily," he said, stepping close without alarming her. "May I have a word?" She looked up, calm, unreadable. "Commander Hall," she replied, nodding once. Her voice carried a quiet authority. Hale gestured to a quieter hallway. She followed, silent, her footsteps echoing in rhythm with his own. Once alone, Hale studied her carefully. "Do you mind if I ask? Where did you get your training?" His words were casual, but every muscle in his body was alert. Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. "Training?" she asked. Her tone was measured, careful. "You handle weapons like a seasoned operative," he said, leaning slightly closer. "There's experience behind those movements. I've seen it before. And I've seen you in action." Emily's eyes flickered, brief, almost imperceptible. For a moment, the calm veneer cracked, and Hale caught a glimpse of the woman beneath, Valkyrie. But she didn't confirm. She only shook her head slightly. "Some of us have pasts that aren't on file," she said quietly, then straightened, returning to the neutral expression that hid everything. Hale's pulse quickened. The encounter confirmed his suspicions, partially. She wasn't going to tell him everything, but the presence of Valkyrie was undeniable. The thought of having such a skilled operative under his observation, now walking freely on base, both thrilled and terrified him. Thrilled because he could rely on her skills if needed. Terrified because the danger that followed Valkyrie always came with a cost. Later that evening, Hale accessed encrypted communication logs, cross-referencing intelligence reports from overseas. He found subtle connections, anomalies in defense protocol, minor breaches, unexplained reconnaissance movements. They pointed to potential threats near U.S. installations, threats that Valkyrie, if she were indeed Emily, could intercept. Hale's mind raced with strategy, trying to anticipate her involvement without alerting the Pentagon or other officials. Meanwhile, Emily returned to her routines. She analyzed encrypted data, prepared reports, and reviewed weapon schematics with the meticulous care of someone whose every decision could save lives or cost them. Her colleagues continued to underestimate her, some still smirking at the memory of the armory incident. Yet beneath her quiet exterior, she was preparing for challenges none of them could imagine. That night, Hale sat alone in his office, staring at a photo of the fallen mission in Afghanistan, the one Valkyrie had saved him from. Memories of that night were raw. The gunfire, the cries of men pinned down, the impossible escape through the mountains. And then there had been her, a shadow moving faster than thought, killing enemies with silent efficiency, saving lives without a second glance. Could the same shadow be here now as Emily Carter? The possibility both thrilled and unnerved him. The following morning, Hale observed Emily from a distance as she oversaw a routine weapons inspection. Every motion precise, every command deliberate. Even in casual conversation, her posture betrayed experience, awareness, and control. He noticed how younger officers instinctively deferred to her advice on logistics and tactics, unaware of the lethal proficiency behind her calm exterior. The codename, the history, the skill, it all began to align in his mind. Emily Carter was Valkyrie. But why had she returned? What mission had brought her back into the orbit of the SEALs and Pentagon intelligence? Hale didn't know. And for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt since Afghanistan. Anticipation. A storm was coming, and he had a ghost of the past walking among them. A ghost called Valkyrie. As he left the observation post, Hale resolved to be ready. Whatever secrets Emily carried, whatever skills she concealed, he would need them, and soon. The mocking laughter of the base's soldiers faded in his memory, replaced with the image of a woman who moved like shadow and steel, silent, lethal, unstoppable. Valkyrie was back. And Hale, for the first time in years, felt the pulse of danger and hope racing together. The early morning mist hung low over the base, draping the rows of barracks and vehicles in a ghostly gray. Emily Carter moved through the corridors with her usual quiet efficiency, clipboard in hand, checking weapon systems and ammunition stock. Her calm presence belied the tension simmering beneath the surface. Hale had warned her to remain alert, but even he couldn't anticipate what was about to erupt. At precisely 0543 hours, the alarm screamed. Red lights flashed, sirens wailed, and the ground trembled beneath the pounding of distant explosions. Hale, who had been reviewing intel reports in his office, bolted to the windows. Smoke curled upward from the perimeter, and flames licked the armory's edges. Chaos erupted instantly. Soldiers scrambled, shouting orders, panic painting their faces as they sought cover. The base had been breached. Emily didn't hesitate. She moved toward the control room, weaving through the panic with the same precision she had exhibited with her rifle just days before. Her hands flew over the emergency override panels, her mind processing sequences and bypassing locked security protocols almost instinctively. Around her, trained soldiers ran frantically, unable to access weapons because the system had been compromised. Emily's calm contrasted sharply with the chaos, a silent pillar amid a storm. From the armory, the intruders emerged, armed, coordinated, and deadly. Hale and his team tried to intercept, but their movement was hampered by the lockdown protocols. The gunfire began, sharp, controlled, and purposeful. Bullets ricocheted off walls. Shouts mixed with the sharp crack of weapons. Emily, once she unlocked the armory doors, grabbed a rifle without hesitation. Her movements were fluid, almost preternatural, as if she had been training for this exact moment her entire life. She emerged into the corridor, rifle shouldered, and assessed the situation in seconds. Wounded Marines crawled to cover, their faces pale with fear. A senior officer barked an order to suppress the attackers, but Emily's voice cut through the chaos with calm authority. Left flank, 3 targets. Cover the injured. The SEALs froze, surprised by her decisiveness. But instinct and experience took over. They obeyed. The first shot rang out, precise and clean. Emily hit the nearest intruder with perfect accuracy, followed immediately by two more. Every bullet found its mark, her posture balanced, breathing controlled, muscles coiled and released with practiced efficiency. She moved like a shadow, almost untouchable, guiding soldiers through the chaos with hand signals and whispered commands. Even Hale's seasoned eyes widened at her fluid, tactical precision. The attackers hesitated, confused by the sudden order and deadly efficiency of a single woman among the defenders. Emily shifted positions, keeping herself covered while observing patterns in the enemy's approach. She adjusted fire to neutralize threats before they could react, her mind calculating trajectories, reload times, and escape routes. The panic around her didn't affect her. The men who had mocked her days ago now followed her lead without question. Hale arrived at the corridor, gun raised, scanning for threats. He witnessed her in action, and disbelief struck him like a hammer. Every motion, every decision, every movement screamed experience, control, and lethality. She was no civilian analyst. She was Valkyrie reborn. His pulse quickened. Years of memory flooded back. A dark night in Afghanistan, a mountain ambush, bullets ripping through the air, 6 men pinned down, and a shadow moving faster than thought to save them all. Emily noticed Hale and gave a single nod, acknowledgement, not greeting. There was no time for pleasantries. She directed fire toward a secondary group attempting to breach the medical bay. Her instinctive commands ensured the wounded were shielded while suppressing enemy advance. One soldier tried to question her orders, but she didn't raise her voice. A glance and a subtle hand gesture silenced him instantly. Authority radiated from her, calm, lethal, undeniable. The sound of gunfire echoed in the corridors as Emily moved through cover, dispatching threats with efficiency that left even veteran SEALs in awe. Every calculated shot, every tactical decision revealed the depth of her past training. Hale found himself thinking in fragments. Impossible, Valkyrie. Here, alive. Controlling everything. The woman they had dismissed as a civilian had become the linchpin of survival in this chaos. By the time the initial assault was contained, the intruders had been neutralized or forced into retreat. Smoke curled from the corners, and wounded soldiers were being assisted toward triage. Hale approached Emily cautiously, his mind still reeling. "Emily," he began, but she didn't respond immediately. Her eyes scanned the corridor, noting every structural flaw, every exit, every potential threat, even in the aftermath. Finally, she lowered her rifle, returning it to the armory with methodical care. Her breathing was steady, her expression unreadable. The SEALs who had once mocked her now stared in stunned silence. Hale could barely speak, staring at the woman who had saved his men again. The legend of Valkyrie was real, and she was standing right before him, calm and composed as if the chaos had been a mere exercise. For the first time in years, Hale felt the combination of awe, relief, and fear that he had only ever associated with combat. Emily's quiet power, her lethal calm, and her unshakable precision had shifted the balance of the battle in moments. She hadn't sought recognition. She hadn't shouted commands or demanded credit. She had simply acted with all the certainty of someone who knew exactly what had to be done. Later, in the aftermath of the attack, Hale observed the base's security footage. Emily's movements were fluid, almost uncanny, as she guided soldiers, neutralized intruders, and safeguarded the wounded. The footage showed no hesitation, no error, only precision. Her skill had turned what could have been a catastrophic breach into a controlled defensive operation. The men who had laughed at her presence now whispered her name with respect and awe, though few could pronounce the codename that haunted Hale's mind. Valkyrie. That evening, as the base settled into uneasy quiet, Hale found Emily alone in the control room. She was quietly reviewing systems, ensuring no further breaches. Her hands moved with the same practiced efficiency that had saved lives earlier that morning. Halle approached cautiously, aware that words might break the fragile calm of her focus. "Emily," he said softly, leaning against the doorway. She looked up, unflinching, her gaze steady and unreadable. "Commander Howe," she replied. Silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. He wanted to ask questions, to confirm the truth that had been whispered in legends and hinted in security files. Yet she gave nothing away. Her calm, unshakable, almost untouchable, seemed impenetrable. Halle realized then that Emily Carter was no longer just an analyst, no longer a civilian presence in the SEAL world. She was Valkyrie incarnate, a living ghost of the past, capable of commanding life-and-death situations with uncanny precision. And if she had returned to the base, it was no accident. A storm was coming, and she was at the center of it. Outside, smoke lingered over the armory, the orange glow from smoldering fires casting eerie shadows. Halle watched as Emily moved with quiet purpose, checking systems and ensuring every soldier's safety. The base had survived the morning's attack, but the questions now loomed larger than ever. Why had she returned? Who was behind the assault? And most importantly, was the legend of Valkyrie about to be tested once more? Halle knew only one thing for certain. With Emily Carter in the fight, survival was possible. Without her, nothing else could be guaranteed. And the SEAL commander, who had once believed Valkyrie was lost to the past, now understood that history had a way of returning, silent, deadly, and unstoppable. The aftermath of the attack left the base in a tense hush. Smoke lingered in the corners, alarms had ceased, and wounded soldiers were being attended to, but the air remained thick with adrenaline and unease. The men who had once laughed at Emily Carter for asking for a rifle now avoided her gaze, unsure whether to speak, defer, or simply watch. She moved among them with calm efficiency, checking systems, adjusting weapon placements, and ensuring security protocols were fully restored. Nothing about her demeanor had changed, but Halle could sense the storm beneath her composed exterior. He found her in the armory, kneeling beside a row of rifles, inspecting them with the same meticulous care she had shown before the attack. Her hands were steady despite the chaos of the morning, her expression unreadable. Halle approached quietly, watching her work in silence. The other officers gave them space, some whispering questions, but none dared interrupt. "Emily," Halle began, his voice low and careful, as if speaking too loudly would shatter something fragile. She didn't look up immediately, her attention fixed on the weapons before her. "Do you mind if I ask? Something personal?" She finally lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes with an intensity that made him take a step back. There was no fear there, no hesitation, only clarity and purpose. "Personal?" she repeated, her tone steady. "You handled that attack like you've done it before," Halle said slowly. "More than once. Way more than once. Who are you, really?" His words hung in the air, heavy with questions he hadn't dared to voice before. For a moment, Emily's calm mask faltered. The briefest flash of something, recognition, memory, weight, crossed her face. Halle saw it and felt it, though she quickly regained her composure. She straightened, letting out a controlled breath as if she had exhaled years of secrets in that single instant. "I was Valkyrie?" she said quietly, almost a whisper. The name itself was heavy, almost sacred. Hale's heart skipped. Valkyrie, the operative he had believed dead, the ghost who had saved 6 of his men in Afghanistan, whose actions had become legend in classified reports and hushed conversations. He had seen the files, read the mission reports, and memorized every detail of her bravery, yet seeing her standing there, alive, calm and fully in control, shook him to his core. "You," he began, but words failed him. Memories flooded his mind. The night in the mountains, the ambush, the hail of bullets, the cries of pinned men, and the shadow moving faster than thought, eliminating threats with lethal precision. "You saved my men," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "And then you disappeared." Emily nodded once, her expression neutral, but eyes betraying a trace of something softer, regret, perhaps, or simply remembrance. "I survived," she said. "I chose to disappear. Some of us don't get the luxury of normal life. Some of us only get survival, and the occasional chance to protect lives that matter." Halle stepped closer, studying her. Why now? Why return? His mind raced. She had no official deployment orders, no active duty status, and yet here she was fully capable, fully lethal, and operating within a base filled with men who didn't know who she really was. Emily tilted her head slightly. "I wasn't looking to return," she said softly. "But the attack, the threat, I had to be here. It was inevitable, and someone needed to be ready." Her words were calm, deliberate, but Holly could feel the weight behind them. This was no casual presence. This was calculated, deliberate, necessary. The weight of realization hit Halle. She hadn't come back for recognition, orders, or medals. She had returned because she was Valkyrie, because she couldn't ignore danger when it threatened innocent lives, because the skills, experience, and instincts that had saved countless men in the past were still alive within her. The room remained silent. The men who had observed her earlier now watched from a distance, their awe and fear evident. The mocking laughter that had once greeted her request for a rifle was gone. What remained was respect, tinged with disbelief, and a quiet understanding that Emily Carter was no ordinary civilian analyst. She was a force beyond measure. Halle studied her carefully. Every movement, every gesture, every subtle shift in posture revealed the history of someone trained beyond conventional limits. She didn't need accolades. She didn't need to explain herself. She simply existed with lethal grace, and that was enough. He finally spoke, his voice quieter than before, almost reverent. "Valkyrie, I thought you were gone." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes steady and unwavering. "Many of us are," she said, "but not all. Some survive, and we wait. We watch, and when necessary, we act." Her words carried the weight of experience, sacrifice, and loss, a truth only those who had lived through it could understand. Halle nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of her presence. "The attack this morning," he said, "you saved lives. Entire squads. You controlled chaos that even our best teams would have struggled with." Emily's expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of acknowledgement in her eyes. "I do what must be done," she said simply. "It's not about glory. It's about survival. And sometimes, timing. You can't control when danger comes, only how you respond." Halle understood. And in that understanding, a new layer of respect, trust, and responsibility took root. This wasn't just Emily Carter, the analyst. This was Valkyrie, a woman whose life had been forged in shadows, combat, and clandestine operations. And she was back, walking among them, a living ghost of the past, fully capable of altering the future. As the day wore on, Halle discreetly shared the revelation with a select few officers who had been present during the attack. The room filled with hushed tones, incredulous stares, and quiet reverence. Valkyrie had returned alive in the body of the analyst they had mocked. And the implication was clear. Nothing about the base, the defense protocols, or their enemies would ever be the same. Emily, meanwhile, resumed her work, checking security logs, reinforcing defenses, and quietly preparing for whatever might come next. Her presence was a reminder, silent, lethal, and unyielding, that the past was not gone, and legends could return when least expected. Halle watched her from a distance, awe and respect battling with lingering disbelief. Valkyrie had returned, and with her, a promise. The next threat, no matter how deadly, would face a woman who was unstoppable, unflinching, and fully aware of the stakes. The ghost of the past was alive, and the world would soon remember why her codename inspired both fear and hope. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the base. Emily's silhouette moved with quiet purpose, checking systems and ensuring readiness. Halle knew that whatever lay ahead, attacks, missions, or threats beyond imagination, Valkyrie would stand ready. And for the first time in years, he felt certain that survival, even against impossible odds, was possible. Because Emily Carter wasn't just back. She was Valkyrie. And she had returned to change everything. The days following the attack were tense and electric. Halle moved like a man caught between memory and urgency, monitoring security logs, coordinating with intelligence officers, and quietly assessing Emily Carter. Valkyrie's presence had already changed the rhythm of the base. Soldiers moved with renewed caution, officers deferred to her judgment, and Halle couldn't shake the sense that the breach was only the opening act of something far larger. Intelligence reports arrived in encrypted bursts, each more alarming than the last. Analysts confirmed that the attack on the base had been part of a coordinated, multi-phase operation targeting critical U.S. defense infrastructure. Sensitive data had been stolen, and the threat matrix indicated an imminent strike on American soil. The Pentagon was on high alert, scrambling units and preparing contingency plans. But despite the warnings, there was one problem. No active team was ready to undertake the mission required. Halle sat in the briefing room, watching faces filled with uncertainty. Teams hesitated, weighing risk against protocol, training against liability. The operation would require skill beyond ordinary training, precision beyond ordinary judgment. Every officer present understood that failure could mean catastrophic loss, thousands of lives at stake, national security hanging by a thread. The room felt heavy, charged with fear and tension. Halle leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. He had already made his decision. There was only one person he could rely on to lead the operation with a combination of intelligence, skill, and lethal precision: Emily Carter. He requested a private meeting with her in the armory. She arrived quietly, her expression neutral, hands folded behind her back, eyes calm and piercing. Halle motioned to the table, placing a sealed folder in front of her. "Emily," he said, voice steady, "this mission, it's off the books. Highly classified. No active duty teams are available or cleared for this. It's dangerous. And if it fails..." He let the words hang in the air. Emily glanced at the folder, her gaze flickering briefly to the corners of the room, assessing escape routes, cover, and entry points, habits ingrained from years of covert operations. "If it fails, we survive?" she asked, voice soft but firm. Halle nodded. "Somehow, you'll have a small, specialized team. Off the books. Only the people you trust will know. The mission is to intercept the stolen data, prevent the strike, and neutralize the threat. No backup, no second chances." Emily leaned back slightly, considering. Her fingers traced the edge of the folder, reviewing the minimal details she could access. She didn't flinch at the danger. The stakes were high, yes, but risk had always been part of her world. Lives depended on precision, on timing, on skill, all things she understood instinctively. "I assume you're asking because you trust me to succeed where others would fail," she said finally. Hale's lips tightened. I trust no one else to get the job done. The Pentagon's hesitant, the protocol rigid, and the consequences unforgiving. But you, I know you'll do what's necessary. Emily nodded slowly, acknowledging the weight of the responsibility. Then I accept, she said. Her tone wasn't triumphant or boastful. It was matter-of-fact, calm, unwavering. She had accepted worse missions in the past, and this was no different. For her, it wasn't about glory. It was about survival, precision, and duty. Hale activated a secure line to coordinate the team. He handpicked operators, all highly skilled but unofficial veterans, who owed loyalty to him personally and trusted Emily implicitly. Their expertise spanned combat, intelligence, reconnaissance, and tactical extraction. Together, the group would form an off-the-record strike unit capable of executing the mission without bureaucratic interference. As the team gathered, Emily assumed her role naturally. She issued instructions with clarity, moving among them with a quiet authority that demanded attention without intimidation. Hale observed from a distance, noting how the men instinctively deferred to her judgment. The same soldiers who had mocked her for requesting a rifle now followed her every hand signal, word, and decision. Respect had replaced derision, but Hale knew it went deeper. Fear, admiration, and trust intertwined in a way that made her presence indispensable. The mission briefings continued late into the night. Maps, coordinates, and intelligence reports covered the tables. Emily studied each detail meticulously, memorizing terrain, potential threats, and contingencies. Hale watched her work, noting her precision and foresight. Even in planning, she was Valkyrie, a shadow operative whose mind calculated every risk, weighed every variable, and anticipated enemy actions before they occurred. By the time the base settled into quiet, Emily was ready. She had memorized routes, exit strategies, weapon allocations, and communication protocols. Every member of the team had been trained to respond to her signals, to follow her lead without hesitation. Hale finally approached her privately, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Emily," he said softly, "you know what's coming will test everything. You'll be outnumbered, outgunned, and under constant threat. But I believe in you." She looked up, eyes steady, calm. "I don't need belief, Hale. I need preparation and clarity. Everything else is noise." Her words were sharp, precise, and unyielding. The resolve in her eyes made him realize something fundamental. Valkyrie didn't act out of hope, fear, or pride. She acted because it was necessary. Survival, precision, duty. That was her calculus. Before dawn, the team moved to deploy. Helicopters lifted silently into the sky, carrying men who trusted Emily completely, even though the rest of the world knew nothing of their mission. She issued quiet instructions, pointing out enemy positions, coordinating flight paths, and anticipating obstacles. Every move calculated, every action deliberate. Hale observed from the command post, heart tight with both worry and admiration. He had deployed men into impossible situations before, but never with someone like Emily leading them, someone who had already survived death multiple times and emerged sharper, stronger, and colder. As the convoy disappeared into the horizon, Hale sat back, reviewing contingency plans and backup protocols. Emily Carter Valkyrie had accepted the mission that no one else dared to touch. The weight of her presence, her past, and her lethal capability pressed on him. He knew that the coming hours would test everyone involved, skill, courage, and loyalty, and that the margin for error was razor thin. The night before the mission ended quietly, the base enveloped in shadows. Soldiers whispered rumors, officers speculated, and Hale alone understood the truth. The mission's success hinged on a single woman with a codename that carried both fear and reverence. Valkyrie had returned, and she would lead the charge into danger. For Emily, sleep was unnecessary. Preparation was instinct. Strategy was instinct. Survival was instinct. Her mind raced through scenarios, contingencies, and threat assessments, ensuring that when the time came, no misstep would go unaccounted for. She was ready, calm, lethal, and entirely unshakable. By sunrise, the team would be in motion. The world would not know their names, their actions, or the danger they faced. But Halle knew, and he trusted Emily completely. In a mission no one else would dare undertake, the fate of countless lives rested on her shoulders, and he was certain she was the only one capable of carrying it. And as she looked at the maps one last time, her eyes narrowed with quiet determination. Valkyrie was back, and no one, no enemy, no protocol, no impossible odds would stop her from completing what had to be done. The black helicopter sliced through the night sky, the low hum of its engines blending with the distant rumble of thunder over the rugged terrain below. Inside, Emily Carter sat rigid, eyes scanning every instrument, every movement of her team. Around her, the off-the-book strike team followed silently, weapons ready, senses heightened. No chatter, no unnecessary noise, only the quiet rhythm of preparation. Every man and woman knew that Emily's calm, precise focus was the line between life and death. Halle watched remotely from the command post, his hands tight on the console. Every transmitted signal, every heartbeat on the monitor, carried weight. He had deployed men into impossible situations before, but never with someone like Emily at the helm, a woman whose reputation for lethal efficiency preceded her, who had survived countless near-death encounters, and whose mind anticipated threats before they became apparent. The helicopter descended toward the mountainside target, an enemy compound housing stolen defense data. Emily briefed the team one last time. We go in silent. No alarms. Every movement calculated. Team Alpha secures entry. Team Bravo covers rear exits. Extraction point is marked. Stay close. Trust each other. Trust me. Her voice was calm, but carried the unmistakable weight of command. The soldiers nodded, their trust absolute. They had seen her in action, known her skills, and understood that hesitation could mean death. The landing was precise, almost imperceptible, as the helicopter touched down atop the ridge. Emily jumped first, rifle ready, landing with barely a sound. Team Alpha followed, every step deliberate, eyes scanning for motion, heat signatures, and any indication of ambush. The compound sprawled below, lit by intermittent generator lights, shadows dancing against the walls. Emily assessed the perimeter instantly, identifying the weakest points, enemy guard rotations, and blind spots. Hale's voice crackled in their comms briefly. Status? Ready, Emily replied. Proceeding to breach. With surgical precision, Team Alpha advanced, moving through darkness like shadows themselves. Emily led, her instincts sharp, anticipating every trap, every potential encounter. 2 guards approached a security checkpoint. She signaled, and with 3 suppressed shots, the men fell silently, unseen. Her team flowed around her, covering each angle, following her lead with unhesitating obedience. Each step was choreographed instinctively, every motion pre-planned but adaptable. Inside the compound, chaos reigned on the other side, but Emily's section moved like a phantom. Sensors triggered alerts, lights flickered, and intruders began to mobilize. She adjusted instantly, whispering commands that coordinated her team's movements, neutralizing threats with minimal exposure. Her eyes flicked to a side corridor where she detected a patrol moving in the opposite direction. She paused, breath measured, then signaled silently. The team repositioned seamlessly, ambushing the patrol without alerting others. The stolen defense data was located in a secured room, protected by both physical locks and electronic encryption. Emily's fingers moved over the keypad with practiced speed, bypassing security protocols designed to take hours and minutes. Every second was measured, every motion precise. The team stood ready, rifles aimed, backs straight, eyes scanning shadows. Hale's remote monitoring displayed her efficiency in stark clarity. Every breach, every tactical decision, every movement was flawless. Even seasoned operatives, who had seen decades of combat, could not have executed with such silent precision. Valkyrie was in her element, lethal and unstoppable. Suddenly, gunfire erupted in another section of the compound. Enemy reinforcements had arrived. Emily's team reacted instantly, moving to contain the threat while she completed the extraction. Her calmness never wavered, yet her mind calculated trajectories, cover points, and potential exit routes with superhuman clarity. The intruders were skilled, but they were unprepared for Emily's foresight, her precision, and the silent coordination of her team. Minutes stretched into tense eternity. Emily covered wounded operators, coordinated suppressive fire, and neutralized threats in a seamless rhythm. One enemy soldier attempted to flank the rear. She pivoted, fired a precise shot, and forced him to retreat. Another tried to breach the data vault. A hand signal redirected two operators to intercept. Every decision, every movement, executed with the efficiency of a machine and the judgment of someone who had survived impossible odds countless times. The extraction point loomed closer, but so did a greater threat. A secondary squad of heavily armed operatives had reinforced the perimeter. Emily assessed the situation instantly. Team Bravo, cover the rear. Team Alpha, formation tight. Extraction in 2 minutes. Move! Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. Every operator responded without hesitation. Bullets whizzed past, ricocheting off walls and metal. Emily remained calm, adjusting her stance, covering her team, and neutralizing threats with surgical efficiency. Hale watched remotely, heart pounding, as the data was secured, and the team prepared for exfiltration. Every move calculated, every decision precise. The difference between success and catastrophe lay solely in Emily's leadership. Then the unthinkable. A hidden trap triggered a minor explosion, sending debris and shrapnel across the corridor. One operator was injured, caught in the blast. Without hesitation, Emily dove forward, shielding him with her own body, guiding him to safety. Pain flashed across her shoulder where metal grazed her, but she ignored it, continuing to coordinate the team, ensuring no further casualties. Her voice remained steady, calm, authoritative. "Extraction now," she commanded. The team moved in formation, maintaining cover and speed. Enemy fire pursued, but Emily anticipated the patterns, adjusting their path through shadows, blind spots, and pre-mapped escape routes. Every second mattered. Every movement counted. And yet, she remained the calm eye in the storm, the silent force around which chaos bent. Finally, the helicopter arrived at the extraction point, hovering low. Operators boarded quickly under Emily's direction. She was last to move, ensuring no one was left behind, every detail accounted for. Hale's voice came through the comms, tense but proud. "Status?" "All secured," Emily replied, voice calm, unshaken. "Team intact. Data recovered. Extraction successful." Hale exhaled slowly, realizing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Emily Carter, Valkyrie, had led an impossible mission, guided her team through a hostile compound, neutralized threats, protected the wounded, and secured critical national defense data. And she had done it all with calm precision, authority, and lethal efficiency that left even the most seasoned operators in awe. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying the strike team into the darkness, Emily allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. Her shoulder throbbed where shrapnel grazed her, but she didn't dwell. Every operator was alive, the mission was a success, and the threat neutralized for now. Holly, observing from the command post, knew that this operation had changed everything. The legend of Valkyrie was not a memory. She was alive, present, and more formidable than anyone could have imagined. Outside, the mountains stretched into darkness, shadows swallowing the compound they had left behind. Inside the helicopter, the team remained silent, exhausted yet alive, bound by trust in a leader whose experience and skill had carried them through impossible odds. Emily looked out the window, eyes calm but ever watchful. The world was unpredictable, dangerous and cruel, and she had returned to navigate it, unstoppable and unflinching. Haile remained at the command post long after the helicopter disappeared from view. The monitor displayed silence, but his mind raced. Valkyrie was back, and with her, a force that would challenge every threat before it could strike. And he knew, deep down, that the storm was far from over. The dawn painted the mountains in blood-orange streaks, casting long shadows over the rocky terrain. Emily Carter, known to a select few as Valkyrie, crouched beside the last of her team members, surveying the aftermath of their extraction mission. They had returned with the data secured, the majority of the team intact, but the victory was far from complete. Intelligence reports indicated that the stolen data had been a decoy, a distraction designed to lure them into a trap. Somewhere, deeper in the mountains, the real threat waited, heavily armed and prepared to annihilate any intruders. Hale's voice crackled through the comms, urgent yet restrained. "Emily, the intel just came in. That data you recovered? It's a bait operation. There's another facility, heavily fortified. The enemy expects a strike, and they're ready. Do you copy?" Emily's eyes narrowed. She processed the information instantly, evaluating possibilities, contingencies, and risks. Every moment of hesitation could cost lives. She responded calmly, voice measured. "Copy. Location and defenses?" Halle relayed the coordinates and defensive analysis. Emily scanned the schematics mentally, visualizing paths, choke points, and enemy positions. Her mind raced, calculating probability, timing, and tactical advantage. The operation would require a split-second combination of precision, deception, and courage. She turned to her team. "We move fast, quiet, and coordinated. This mission leaves no margin for error. If we're discovered, extraction will be impossible. We adapt, we cover each other, and we survive." Her voice carried authority, a tone that left no room for hesitation. Each member nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had seen her in action before, but the stakes this time were unprecedented. The approach was treacherous. Steep cliffs, narrow ridges, and unpredictable terrain slowed their progress. Enemy patrols were frequent, more alert, and better armed than in the previous mission. Emily's instincts were sharp. She led her team through hidden paths, avoiding detection while maintaining tight formation. Her leadership was invisible, yet palpable, guiding the group silently, keeping every member's survival in mind. Halfway to the target, an ambush erupted. Explosions tore through the rocky slope, bullets ricocheting off the cliffs. A team member went down, pinned by heavy gunfire. Emily reacted instantly. Diving to shield him, she returned fire with precise, lethal accuracy. Her movements were fluid, practiced, the kind of instinct born from countless impossible missions. Halle monitored the operation from the remote command post. His heart raced as he watched live feed drones, showing Emily and her team engaged in a firefight that would have overwhelmed any ordinary unit. But she was not ordinary. She moved like shadow and steel, anticipating enemy movements, redirecting her team, and neutralizing threats with surgical precision. As they closed in on the facility, Emily realized that the path to success required a dangerous sacrifice. A heavily fortified gate controlled access to the compound, and attempting to breach it directly would attract overwhelming enemy fire. She assessed alternatives, mapping risk versus reward with cold logic. The only option to save her team was to create a diversion, one that required her to expose herself fully to enemy lines. Her eyes met Hale's over the secure comms, voice low but steady. "I'll draw their attention. The rest of you move in and secure the facility. Trust me." Hale's chest tightened. He had witnessed her survive impossible odds before, but this time, the stakes were immeasurable. "Emily, there has to be another way," he said, voice cracking with tension. She shook her head once, decisively. "There isn't. This is the only way. Get your men inside. I'll hold them off." With that, she moved into the open, firing from a concealed ridge. Her shots were calculated, precise, forcing enemy soldiers to take cover and redirect their focus entirely onto her. Explosions rocked the ground, smoke curling around her like a shroud. Every shot, every movement was designed to buy time for her team, a deadly chess game where she was the only piece willing to be sacrificed. Hale watched, heart pounding, as Emily maneuvered with lethal grace. Bullets whizzed past her, some grazing armor, some missing entirely. Enemy reinforcements advanced, but she remained a phantom of efficiency, neutralizing threats with minimal exposure, always forcing them to react to her moves rather than the mission's objective. Inside the compound, the rest of her team moved silently, guided by Emily's diversion. They bypassed external defenses, avoided patrols, and entered the facility undetected. Their success depended entirely on her ability to hold the enemy outside, and she held with unwavering precision, every second stretching into an eternity. The diversion was working. Hale breathed a small sigh of relief as his team reached the core of the facility. But the battle outside intensified. Emily was now surrounded by superior numbers. She assessed the situation instantly, calculating every move, every angle, every shot. Every moment brought greater risk, but retreat was impossible. Lives depended on her sacrifice. Then, an explosion erupted near her position. Rocks tumbled, smoke filled the air, and a soldier was knocked unconscious. Emily didn't hesitate. She dragged him to safety while returning fire, her body moving as if in perfect synchronization with the chaos. Her mind calculated trajectories, exit paths, and enemy reactions simultaneously, a feat impossible for ordinary human reflexes. Hale's knuckles widened around the console. "Emily, you have to get out of there," he shouted into the comms. She paused briefly, eyes steady. "Extraction is secondary. Mission is primary. I'll meet you later. If the team survives, it's because I held them here." The enemy pressed harder, and Emily's team inside the facility completed their objective. They secured the critical data, neutralized internal threats, and prepared for extraction. Hale's anxiety escalated. Emily was still outside, fully exposed, and the enemy was relentless. A sudden flanking maneuver by a squad of elite soldiers forced Emily to adapt instantly. Using every ounce of skill, every piece of terrain, and every instinct, she redirected their fire, forced them into choke points, and neutralized their advantage. But the cost was visible. Her movements slowed slightly, and the weight of fatigue and injury became apparent. Hale's voice trembled over the comms. "Emily, get out now. You've done enough." Her response was calm, almost serene, despite the chaos. "Not enough yet. Hold them while I clear the path. Team survives. That's all that matters." The final moments were a ballet of lethal precision and calculated risk. She used explosives to block enemy reinforcements, suppressed fire too, cover her team's exit, and led a controlled retreat toward the extraction point. Every move was a gamble, every decision a potential death sentence. And yet, Emily moved with unwavering focus, embodying the codename that haunted Halle and inspired legends, Valkyrie. As the helicopter descended, she sprinted toward the extraction line, bullets striking around her, some grazing armor, some narrowly missing. She reached the platform, hoisting herself aboard as the rotors lifted them into the sky. Her shoulder burned from shrapnel, her arms ached, and every muscle screamed in protest, but she had done it. Every life she had protected was intact, every mission objective secured. And yet, the weight of her sacrifice was etched across her face, silent but undeniable. Halle exhaled, a mixture of relief, pride, and lingering fear washing over him. Emily had risked everything. Herself, her safety, her life, to ensure the success of the mission and the survival of her team. She had acted as Valkyrie always did, precise, selfless, and unflinching. As the helicopter carried them back into friendly territory, Emily allowed herself a brief moment to close her eyes, catching her breath. The world outside was still dangerous, still unpredictable, but she had endured. She had survived, and she had saved lives again. Halle, watching the monitors, whispered under his breath, almost reverently, "Valkyrie, the ghost who returned, the one who sacrifices for everyone else, unstoppable." The helicopter descended into the hidden base under the cloak of early morning fog. Inside, the team sat in silence, bodies tense but alive, hearts still racing from the mission's deadly ballet. Emily Carter leaned back against the fuselage, her shoulder still throbbing from the shrapnel grazing her muscles stiff and fatigued. She was exhausted, but the familiar calm that had carried her through countless missions remained unwavering. Valkyrie had survived once again. Halle met them at the landing zone, eyes scanning the returning operators. Relief flooded him, tempered by the gravity of what they had endured. He approached Emily cautiously, aware that words could never truly capture the magnitude of her actions. You did it," he said, voice heavy with respect and awe. "Every life accounted for, every objective secured. You've done what no one else could." Emily gave a faint nod, expression unreadable, eyes steady. She allowed herself a brief pause, a single exhale, before responding. Mission complete. Everyone accounted for. Data secure. Extraction successful. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact, but Halle could see the subtle tremor in her hands. Fatigue, pain, and the silent weight of sacrifice. Inside the base, operators moved quietly, debriefing, tending to injuries, and returning to routine, though nothing would ever feel routine again. The world outside remained unaware of the events that had transpired, of the lives that hung by the edge of a blade, or the woman who had carried the weight of survival on her shoulders. Emily walked among them, offering guidance, checking protocols, and ensuring every detail was accounted for, as if she were both the ghost and the guardian of the base. Halle followed her, stepping into the secure operations room. He watched as she reviewed the data, confirmed the mission's success, and coordinated the final extraction of intelligence. Every move was deliberate, efficient, and precise. Halle realized that while the immediate danger had passed, the legend of Valkyrie was far from over. She had returned not only to survive, but to leave a mark that would resonate far beyond the battlefield. "Emily," Halle began, careful to meet her gaze. "How do you do it? How do you move through chaos, survive against impossible odds, and still remain this calm?" She paused, considering the question. Her eyes reflected experience, pain, and the quiet knowledge of one who had seen too much. "It's not about calm," she said finally. "It's about focus. Every life, every action, every decision has a consequence. I don't have the luxury of fear, and I don't have time for doubt. I do what must be done. That's all. Halle absorbed her words, realizing that her philosophy, born from countless near-death experiences and impossible missions, was both simple and profound. Valkyrie was not just a name, not just a codename whispered in classified reports. She was the embodiment of survival, precision, and selfless courage. News of the mission's success never reached the public. The operation was classified, off the books, and known only to a select few within the Pentagon. Yet within the inner circles of military intelligence, whispers spread. A woman, Emily Carter, had led a strike that no one else could have executed. She had risked everything and survived. She had become a legend in her own right, though she did not seek recognition or praise. Halle walked with her through the corridors, watching as her team debriefed, their respect for her evident in every glance, every gesture. Soldiers who had once mocked her now treated her with quiet reverence. The codename Valkyrie carried weight, fear for those who opposed her, respect for those who served with her, and awe for those who had witnessed her lethal efficiency firsthand. For Emily, the mission was complete, but the work never truly ended. She reviewed systems, confirmed data integrity, and checked security protocols. Her presence was a reminder that vigilance, preparation, and skill were the only guarantees in a world rife with danger. She moved silently, efficiently, a living shadow that both protected and inspired. Halle finally stopped beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've done more than survive," he said softly. "You've ensured the safety of countless lives. You've reminded everyone here what courage looks like, what Valkyrie truly means." Emily allowed herself a small smile, faint but genuine. "I do what must be done. History remembers deeds, not names. If lives are saved, that's enough." The team gathered later in a quiet room, debriefing and reflecting. Even without public recognition, their respect for Emily was profound. She had led them through impossible odds, protected every life she could, and ensured the mission's success. They spoke of her skill, her calm under fire, and her uncanny ability to anticipate threats before they materialized. And in every story, her codename, Valkyrie, echoed like a whisper of legend. Halle watched them, pride and awe in his eyes. He knew that Emily Carter had transcended the ordinary. Valkyrie was no longer just a shadow from classified reports. She was alive, active, and a force that could alter the course of missions, lives, and history itself. Later, alone in the quiet of the armory, Emily stood among the weapons she had used, her mind already calculating future possibilities, contingencies, and threats. Her shoulder ached, her muscles protested, but her resolve was intact. The battlefield was never done, and she was never done. Valkyrie was a presence, a force, and a guardian whose legacy would extend far beyond this day, beyond this mission, and beyond the recognition of any single individual. Halle entered quietly, observing her from the doorway. "Emily, what now? Will you stay?" She turned, eyes steady, calm, almost unreadable. "I stay as long as I'm needed," she said. "The world doesn't stop being dangerous. And I don't stop being Valkyrie." Halle nodded, understanding the depth of her statement. She had returned to change the tide, to protect lives, and to remind the world, and herself, that survival, courage, and selfless action were still possible. And in that understanding, he knew that Emily Carter's presence would continue to ripple through the ranks, a living legacy of what it meant to be Valkyrie. The base settled into a rare calm, the echoes of battle fading, yet the memory of Emily's courage and precision remained. Soldiers whispered her name, officers exchanged stories of her efficiency, and Halle sat quietly, reflecting on the impossible woman who had returned from the shadows to lead, protect, and survive. Emily stepped outside into the cool morning air, watching the sunrise over the mountains. She allowed herself a rare moment of stillness, eyes reflecting both exhaustion and determination. She had completed the mission, protected her team, and ensured the security of critical intelligence. But the world was vast, full of threats yet unseen, challenges yet unmet. Valkyrie's shadow stretched across the land, unseen by most, recognized only by those who had lived alongside her or depended on her. Emily Carter's return had altered the balance, her skill and courage shaping events in ways that no one outside her inner circle would ever fully understand. As she walked back to the base, Halle followed at a distance, silent in respect. The legend of Valkyrie was no longer just a story, a codename, or a whispered memory. She was real, alive, and forever changed the lives of those around her. The codename carried weight, history, and promise. It was more than a name. It was a legacy. And for Emily Carter, the ghost who had returned, the path forward remained clear. She would continue to fight, to protect, and to survive. For Valkyrie was not just a survivor, not just a warrior, not just a legend. She was the embodiment of courage and duty, and her story was far from over. The sun climbed higher, casting its light over the base. Emily's shadow stretched long, a reminder of the battles fought, the lives saved, and the legacy she carried. And in the quiet, Halle whispered, almost reverently, "Valkyrie, forever."